Alright guys, welcome back again on this engine build, or bulletproof engine build. I don't think there really is such really quite a thing as bulletproof when it talks to Volkswagens, but as close as you can get. And one of the things you got to do with these, one of the things I want to back up for a second. One of the things we realized that we changed on our engine real quick is we actually didn't show you guys this, that we changed that. We pulled out the front plug here and took out the what is it? I guess it's the relief piston with the high pressure kit. You don't really need that with the full flow system. Apparently, I don't know, we weren't really thinking about that when we put it together, and somebody actually also corrected us on the video, but we've already, we were already en route of changing that back before he was already en route of it. I wasn't sure, as I don't usually make full flow motors. So back in the old days, this was a very rare thing that we did. This is more of a recent engine thing in the last 10 years or 20 years. Okay, the next thing we do is we have to take the new tin and we have to fit it to the engine block. So plan on taking some time. It's not like you can just bolt the stuff back on again. You're going to have to do some things, like if you notice here, this is rounded so that it fits correctly on the new engine block. Some of these, I don't know what we modified on these. I don't think we did. I don't think we did much to the cylinder trim. We fit them on and checked them.
Just trim the back edge on.
Oh yeah, the back edge. That's right. I remember there was something. Because the cases are so much thicker than the old mag, because it's also it's stronger, thicker, and stronger material. So, but you have to fit all the engine tin on. So you want to make sure you mock it all up. It takes a bit of time to do, and then put it on. We did weld our oil pump gear and tested it after it was welded, and then installed it. Like I was showing you, if you watch the oil pump video, I was just talking about putting a little tack weld on there. You don't want to use a lot of heat. I had one other guy comment that you can't do that, it'll mess up this and that. It's like, no, you don't use that much heat. You use enough heat to make it so it'll stay. But we actually have seen two engines with exactly that problem. One got sent all the way to Sacramento and from Riverside, and wasn't one of our engines, but it was another guy's, and he sent it back all the way to Riverside again and checked it. We had very, very low oil pressure, and what it was is the gear was actually spinning on the shaft. Happens. Does work. It does happen, and it's happened twice. So that's why we started welding that gear. So make sure, if you want that insurance, make sure you do that on yours if you want. But anyway, we're fitting all the engine tin, and we'll be putting that on here. We'll be showing that in a little while, and then we'll talk to you in the next portion here. Alright, so we got the old engine out. This engine was actually set to be just in this bus temporarily when I first built it. It just came out of another bus that I sold, and they wanted a new engine. So I just shoved it in there, and then some of the stuff I never got really rigged up right or set up right. So there was some funky stuff like this fuel filter here where it's at. I never put a fuel filter there because it can potentially do this. And that's what it's done before. Of course, it didn't hurt it, didn't burn anything on it, but you know, that's just not the way I usually do stuff. So that stuff is somebody else's stuff. It was just, I just shoved it in here to make it move. And then what happened is it got moved around, then it started running, then we did stuff and we didn't really, you know, set this thing up correctly. So anyway, so we got the motor out. The things that we need to do we need to take off some of the parts that we're going to use on the new one. And there's a lot of stuff that we did to this one, which I'll kind of update you guys on now, since we're here. We had to mock this whole thing up. We had to put the tin on because we had to put our breather kit on. I'll talk to you guys about what a breather kit is. I'll show you a little bit more about that a little bit later. We had to mock that all up, put holes in here for the hoses for it, and all that stuff. We still have to do a lot of fabrication stuff for the hoses for the oil cooler. One of the things I never understood about buses is they always have these slip-on clamps or bugs and buses. It was kind of an archaic thing. You know, I always thought that was just crazy. So what you can buy is what we're going to put on here is these flanges like this. You can buy these at Carcraft. Maybe I'll put these in the video, and if I don't put it in there, make sure you make a comment on that. Make a comment anyway. I always like to see those comments. It really helps the video. So, but yeah, we're going to put these on the exhaust so that it eliminates this crappy design clamp. Sorry, I had you guys out of the video. Eliminates this crappy design clamp, which always ends up like this. And this thing, it had a nice little exhaust leak. It was a little ticker while you're driving down the road. So there's just a couple things we're going to transfer over. We're going to put heater boxes on this because I'm planning on running the heater. I don't know, I might be somewhere where I need it, so I don't know, you know. So I'm going to probably run this exhaust. We're going to try it out. It's probably not the best exhaust for this van, I mean for that engine, but we're going to try it out and see how it goes. We may not be port matched to our exhaust. We're going to take a look at that when we get it apart. There's a lot of little things we're going to transfer over. And some guys go, hey, you can't fit one of these type of fuel pumps on with a alternator. Looks like it happened. So it can be done. Or you just have to loosen it up and lift it up sometimes to get it on there. It's just a little bit of a pain, but it does work. So we're going to put this distributor in it. You know, this is a Bosch coil. It doesn't look like it, but it is. You can see the labels in the back. So we're going to put all this stuff on, and we're going to transfer a bunch of stuff over and clean up what we got here. I think we're going to reuse this rear tin, clean it up in the sandblaster, and repaint it and all that. So we'll bring you guys back in the video a little bit later and show you what's going on with that. All right, unfortunately we were not able to get all the little details of stuff as we were doing it because it was just too much fabrication and stuff like that. But I'm going to walk around some of the stuff with you guys now. We had to remove some of the parts from the other motor or other engine. One guy said, well, it's not a motor, it's an engine. It's like, well, that's true. But, you know, guys just call them motors sometimes. You know, but they're not really motors. We know that. It's just a slang word. So anyway, let's take a look at what we did and stuff. And, you know, typically the wires go in these little hole. They have these little things that go in there. We didn't happen to have any of those. But I'll show you this way to do these. The way not to do them is just to tie them together. If you tie them together with zip ties, what you can end up with is an inductive fire. So if you see here, there's a zip tie covering the two wires, and there's one to keep them spaced, so that you just wrap another zip tie around the middle, and that keeps them spaced. So it makes them look nice or whatever. If you want to do it that way, that might be some idea for some of you guys. But you can do whatever you want. Again, like I said, all the stuff in my video is my opinions. Not stuff that is not, you know, the God sent rule book to everything for sure. You guys do whatever you want to do. One of the things we do is we have a screw-in oil pressure gauge, so you can watch it while it's running. We do not want to install it in the van until after we run it through the break-in time. So we put the screw-in gauge in there. It's just basically a regular oil pressure gauge that you buy, one of those ones, and it has the proper threads typically to go right into the hole. it's a pipe thread, so make sure you don't tighten it too tight because it is a pipe thread. Like one of the guys said, don't tighten up the sensor all the way till it stops. For sure, that's definitely, do not do that. So we got the pointless distributor in here. We got to do the timing still. We did have the Carb Rebuilt. There are you guys that are looking at this, a lot of the stuff has changed. There are two different types of setups on these two barrels. The early ones were the 26, 27s, like what I have. The later ones were the 30, 34. So if you're trying to do the 1600 baud, I would not buy the bigger one. I think they're too big. It's like flushing the toilet when you hit secondary. It's just too much for the car. So, this one here is the better one, I think. I think this engine would probably run with the bigger carb just fine, but the smaller one, not really. So, the smaller one for the smaller engines, those don't work very well. So that's what I think. I don't know. I haven't tuned one. I haven't tried, but all that stuff's all changed. Things that guys are old school guys. So we got the clamp here set up. And then this is the breather kit. So anytime you have more than a higher revving engine, or you have a bigger than a 1776, we found that you pretty much are needing a breather kit hooked up to your engine. So we don't have the back tin on here right now, but there's holes in it already. You see here, cut holes in there. One of these stair-step drill bits from Harbor Freight, like this, is kind of handy to do a lot of that stuff. They're very cheap. You make these and then grind them out. And what this will do is this will go back here after we get the engine in there. When we get ready to put it in the vehicle, then the hoses will actually go through these holes here to the valve covers. And what these breather kits do is, because you have so much more, larger pistons, and you have more stroke, and you have more air movement inside the engine, is to keep it from building up crankcase pressure. And when it builds up too much crankcase pressure, what happens is you'll start pissing oil out of about everywhere it can find a spot to piss out if you don't have one of these. So if you have a larger engine in your car, you don't have these on there, and it's leaking oil, maybe that's why. So I want to get a breather kit. So these go up here, and it kind of neutralizes into here. And one of these little boxes, it comes with these boxes and these hoses here, and they go to the two valve covers, and then it also goes to your normal positive crankcase kind of ventilation and your road draft tube here. So that's all part of it. These alternators that we got here are Chinese made. The old ones back in the old days were made by Motorola, which were, I think, probably better. I very rarely ever saw a Motorola that ever went bad. The Chinese ones, I think, probably better than the most of the generators out there. I'm not going to say all of them. Maybe the Bosch one would be better. I'm not sure. They're so expensive. This is what you end up with. You kind of run into the brick wall. Everybody goes, well, all German parts. Put all German parts on it. And it's like, it's a brick wall now, and a lot of the German parts are not like the old German parts. So you guys that are not currently in the Volkswagen thing, you're kind of watching the videos just to see. The new German parts are, a lot of them made in China, reboxed and sold as German. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking they are, but I can't prove that. But that's the problem. Is you still end up with crap parts, and you're spending a lot more money. And some of them are good, some of them are bad, and it's a total buy it and see type of thing. So these are pretty good. I'm going to say that these are right. Not very many bad ones. In fact, all the parts in this engine are pretty much Chinese, except for the engine tin is German. But they've kind of, a lot of people say the engine case in the oil hole for the oil pump, in the earlier cases, they had a lot of problems with the oil holes that weren't the right size, and they had to O-ring a lot more pumps. I believe they've got that pretty much narrowed down now, unless you get a really old aluminum case, So they've pretty much got a lot of those issues worked out. You know, a lot of the newer parts, you know, a lot of the Chinese parts, they went through R&D issues and stuff. The ones that I don't use are definitely the, and I don't know if they fixed it or not, and I don't want to know, and I don't want to put one in and try, is the MP. You know, MP has some good parts and some bad ones. The MP camshafts we had problems with, the cam and lifter kits, I stay totally clear of those. We were seeing several engines going with flat cams. So for some of the areas around here, the cams would go flat in just a few minutes after you put them in. That was a really rare situation on a typical Volkswagen, because the cam is below the crankshaft. Usually they get plenty of oil and they usually don't go flat. And some people were blaming that on the ZDDP changes in the oil. You know, so ways to combat against some of those things. We run STP, so a little bit of STP has that in it. It has ZDDP in it, and I always run Castrol. Some of the guys say, look, there's going to be a lot of opinions on this stuff. You know, they run Valvoline Racing. Don't think I haven't run all these different oils. Okay, Valvoline Racing. Some guys run, you know, straight oil, straight 50 weight, straight 30 weight, straight 40 weight. I found the 2050 Castrol and the Kendall oil holds its viscosity the best when you take it back out of the motor after it's been running for, I like to say that just to piss those guys off that keep saying that. So when you put it back in the motor, just to you know, after it's been in there and gotten dirty and everything else, it comes out in the same viscosity that goes back in, versus Pennzoil or Quaker State. I mean, that stuff just turns to water, and you know, as soon as you start the motor up, it's kind of like a diesel engine when you put oil in it. You know, some of the old diesel engines, not like my Duramax, but the old diesel engines, you put the oil in, and as soon as you start the motor up, you turn it back off, it's just water. You know, that's the way that all the other oils that I've tried, even Valvoline, you know, it has too much detergent in it to me. I don't know what it is. I'm not an oil formula person, but I just know when I switched to Castrol years ago, it's been the best. And you know, as far as holding its viscosity, making the engine last longer. And you know, I'm not sure on synthetics. You know, my other cars I always run synthetic now. So everything else I've changed to synthetic oil, but in the Volkswagen, I'm not sure how it's going to like that with the really thin viscosity that it turns into. It might find places to leak easier than this will. So that's what we're just going to stick with, what works. So, and I'm not putting, you know, a gazillion miles on stuff. You know, on my other cars, you know, I got high miles. I'll run 300, 400, 500,000 miles on an engine. And I'm using this. So I don't know if I covered everything here. You know, we're running a steel pulley here. I don't like the aluminum ones, especially if you're running a sand seal. We're not running a sand seal. We have the oil slinger. And with these, you know, with this oil slingers, with the non-oil slinger sand seal engine, you definitely need a steel pulley. The ones that are aluminum, you'll find they crack and becomes unreliable. I'm going to get the haters. Thermostat. Out here where we live, we see, if you see here, if you have the flaps, okay, and you're in an area where you don't need thermostat. A lot of people say, oh, always need a thermostat. You always need a thermostat. We don't need thermostats here. Been running them without them for years. I got friends with 150,000 miles on the engine with Chinese parts in it, and they are not, and he's still running it. So, you know, I don't know. Okay, you know, maybe you'll get 300,000 miles out of your engine if you run thermostats. Highly unlikely, but it's a Volkswagen. I'd be surprised if it ever get that many miles. But anyway, your thermostat, if you have the flappers and you run them open, what they can do is help direct the air to the right parts of the head and right parts of the engine to make it work better. But the way I look at it, theoretically, is that with the Type 3 engine tin underneath, I believe that it's going to be just as efficient as without them. So that's my theory, not something that, you know, I'm telling you to do. None of this stuff is, you know, you can do it or not do it. So in California, we had more cars in the shop, and guys will totally tell me that's not true. Okay, but like I said, you know, if you watch my fuel filter video, you're gonna find out we see a lot of Volkswagens. I mean, this is the home of MP. I live in Riverside, home of MP. There was more Volkswagens in Southern California probably than anywhere in the United States because of the air we have and because it's not the rust, stuff like that. So, you know, we had no need for thermostats were actually causing more problems for us with them sticking. I don't know how many, I couldn't even tell you how many cars used to come in the shop that had thermostats and they were stuck, and the engine was completely burned up because the person just didn't know. They just kept driving. If the Volkswagen person might know, you know, they'd know to go reach their hand underneath and feel if there's air coming out. And if there's no air, then you know the thermostat's stuck. But we had a lot of them with that. And we found without running them here that there was no real problem with them running too cold, because we'd never really get very cold here. You know, and as long as you warmed up your engine properly and just didn't rev it up and stuff like that, don't hop in it and fire it up and start revving it. Because guys are running, you know, dual carbs a lot here. They were doing a lot of that stuff, and we didn't have problems with that, with thermostats. But if you're in an area where, you know, where it's really, really cold and you're going to drive it in the winter, which I would be surprised that you are, but if you were in that situation where you're going to do that, then you might want to consider putting the thermostat flaps in a thermostat in your car, and you probably will not need the Type 3 deflector 10 at all. That would, you know, be kind of a waste for you. And same thing with the 1600. If you're running a 1600, you know, stock, and you have, let me see, you have all your tin, including this. A lot of guys have this missing. That's an important piece to bring the air to the back of the car. And there's these two little ones that go right here. They're about this long, and you had the regular flaps underneath. Okay, the regular deflector shields underneath, not the Type 3 style, but the regular deflector shields underneath your cylinder tin. On a 1600, like a single port, maybe on a dual port, depends on how much power you're putting into it, any extra stuff, you're probably fine. There's almost no need to change them to these. We only use these on the high performance engines, or engines that we thought were going to run hotter. So, and that's ones we found. We used data from those to find that we did get some cooler temperatures on the head. Because not everybody had a head temperature sensor, but my friend did, and he was the mechanic in the shop, and we tried it, and we found definite cooling results. They weren't like huge, but they were enough to want to do it. So those are the types of things. Make sure, you know, I make sure I have all the tin on. This oil line is temporary. Okay, when it gets in the car, it's not going to be here. It's not going to be touching the exhaust. We're not sure exactly how we're going to run it, but we might run it underneath here and to the front, and then put the oil cooler up underneath. I'm not sure. We haven't totally got to that. You know, the issue with these, with the full flow system, is that the stuff comes out the side and it conflicts with your exhaust. So, you know, wrapping them might be a good idea. We might do that. You know, something like, you know, some stuff like that. Just trying to show you guys some of this stuff. It took a long time, believe it or not. All this assembly and making this stuff fit and all that stuff takes a lot of time. We just couldn't get it on the video, so I thought I'd just do a walk around. So anyway, that's it for the engine. As before we get you guys stick around and come back later for the Will It Run, and we'll be uploading that after this. I'll talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.